Section 4, Chapters 10 through 13. Continued.
So, excuses. Excuses are another thing that we can niche ourselves into, that we believe, that we use to hold our own selves back.
Oh, absolutely.
And you start this section of the book with one of my favorite things I've ever read. It's a Ben Franklin quote. He that is good for making excuses is seldom good for anything else. And I thought, nary has a more concise and truthful burn ever been delivered by a founding father.
Yep.
Kudos to Ben Franklin. And it's true.
It is absolutely true. I've known myself. Let's start off there. I have made in my life, especially let's just say the art career side of it, right? The majority of my life, I've spent more years alive making excuses on why I couldn't be an artist than years alive being an artist.
Yeah.
Just being an artist. And I've been an artist for 10 years, and I've spent the majority of my life talking myself out of it and buying into some really dumb excuses.
And I can say for myself also some really good excuses, like that look really good on paper. I got so good at making excuses that I didn't actually realize they were excuses a lot of the time. Like they were just truth.
Same here.
That I believe.
And you know what's interesting about that is that when you buy into your excuses like that and somebody is contradicting you, telling you like, no, you can do this, you can whatever, like you will fight tooth and nail, because if your excuse doesn't hold up, right, then what the heck have you been doing all these years?
Absolutely.
Buying into your stupid excuse. And the fact of the matter is that we are brilliant. Our brains are brilliant when it comes to protecting ourselves from doing something that we think is going to end in tragedy, like becoming an artist.
Yeah.
Right? And so like then that's where you start building these really, really great excuses, and you buy into them. You believe in them, whether or not it's an excuse about you, whether or not it's an excuse about whether or not you can do this thing, whether or not it's an excuse about the local market and how people just don't buy art at blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like you basically make excuses to make sense of the areas where you feel like you have shortcomings. And what ends up happening when you just buy into your excuses is you don't take responsibility for it.
Right. It's easy to just kind of feel sad at that point and do nothing.
Yeah, you pawn off because you're blaming someone else. You're blaming the art. That was one of my biggest excuses, was the middlemen in the art world and how it was their fault, and the just the way that society was, and that the art world was built up, and this structure was the reason that I couldn't be an artist, and blah blah. And I was a big victim to that whole thing. And sure, yet maybe part of it's true, but it wasn't true that I was a victim to it, or that I couldn't become an artist because I didn't fit into that structure. I didn't want to be part of that structure. I am so against authority telling me what to do. Of course I'm not going to fit into that structure of middlemen telling me what to do and what kind of art I could create and where I could show my art and when I should show my art and how much I should sell it for. Like, I don't like people telling me what to do.
I know this to be true. You don't even like it when you tell yourself what to do. I've seen you actually rebel against your own guidance and direction. So we've all made excuses. Every human, I think, makes excuses, and I just wanted to kind of go over the main excuses that you listed, and maybe talk about each one a little bit, and see what's there, because sometimes you've come up with a solution for said excuse that I think is effective, and sometimes it's simple enough to just call bullshit on the excuse. So the first one, and probably one of my favorite go-to excuses, was, well, there's just not enough time. I don't have enough time.
Right.
There were periods in my life where I had loads of free time
Yeah.
and I got nothing done
Yeah.
most of the time. And then there have been periods of time where I've been incredibly busy with very little downtime and I accomplish a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons for that is that I learned that when I was sad about not having enough time, I seemed to warp space-time against my own favor. Like, I would shoot myself in the foot. I became unproductive, and time would just slip away.
Yeah. The irony of saying that you don't have enough time is that what ends up happening is you don't have enough time because you spend all that time being worried about not having enough time. You look at people that are dedicated, that they're like, I'm going to make this happen no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? They take every ounce of time that they have available to work on said project.
Every available opportunity.
Exactly. And I've seen authors that have done that and had successful careers. Like they worked full-time jobs and then they woke up at 5 a.m. to work on their book for 2 hours before they went to work. And then they would work on their book at night for a few hours and then do the same thing the next day. So like, any time that I've told myself I don't have enough time, and I'm thinking about those people, and I'm like, well, you know, I slept in and I this and that, and it makes me stop and look at myself, and I'm like, you are such a little whiny ass. Just get doing what it is that you want to do and stop thinking about it and stop complaining that you don't have enough time, because you do.
Absolutely.
You have all the time in the world.
And this is where the whole concept of fa-chunking came from. And I don't think you talk about fa-chunking in this particular book, but fa-chunking is something that's recently been a topic of discussion, something you came up with. And it's basically doing things in little increments of time, either to get yourself out of procrastination mode or to break something down so that you can do it in 15-minute increments.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and the funny thing is that, so fa-chunking will be in the next book, but fa-chunking basically stands for 5 minutes of chunking.
Right.
Just 5 minutes. Just get started on whatever it is that you've been thinking about doing, or especially if it's something that you're like, I don't have enough time to do it. Just give yourself 5 minutes to get started. And you know what? And it's hilarious because I already heard all the excuses when I released the video. There were people that are like, yeah, but it takes that long to get my paints ready or whatever. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Then get your paints ready or give yourself 10 minutes, whatever it is. Like, because either A, you're going to try to fa-chunk that thing, or B, you're just going to sit there and make more excuses on why it is that you can't do it.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how useful fa-chunking has been for me. When I would previously say, I need at least 2 hours to sit down with this music program in order to get an understanding of it, instead of just opening the darn thing and doing what I can for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever
Right.
time you have. It's been pretty amazing what fa-chunking has helped me accomplish.
I mean, that's how I learned how to use like any of the programs that I've tried to use or anything like that, is because a lot of times like I don't want to sit there and like try to figure something out, especially if I'm already thinking that I don't have enough time because like I got to work on this thing, I got to do this thing, and I got to do this thing, and I'm probably going to have to dedicate like an hour and a half to 2 hours, 3 hours working on this thing. I don't know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. And where you just stop and you're like, you know what, let me just start. Let me just start and see what happens. If it's a pain in the butt, then I'll stop. And if not, maybe I'll keep going. Most of the time, I just keep going. And it really doesn't take as long as I think it's going to take, especially when I go into it thinking like, well, let me just screw around with this thing and see what happens for like 5 minutes and play around with it. And like, honestly, that's how I've learned just about every program, is just screwing around and playing around with something.
Absolutely. There's power in let me just fill in the blank.
Let me just blah, 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 blah.
So the next great excuse is there's not enough money, which I have to laugh at a little bit because it's been my experience that no matter how much money we have, there's never enough. And the more money you make, the more stuff you're investing in, the bigger projects you're looking at. So you're always going to kind of be in that place where you don't have the money to do the thing that you have in mind, and you're going to get there.
I mean, that's the thing. You are going to get there. If there is any statement that is just the biggest excuse, that I've heard a lot of artists use to deter themselves from really, really taking risks in their career, it's that one. And, you know, on YouTube, we've got the videos, and just about every video at one point or another, somebody will talk about how they're not making any money. And so, like, you know, that's something that's first and foremost in their mind.
It's huge, yeah.
And I get that because, like, a lot of people want to make this a career. And one of the things that I try to stress, not only in the book, but I've tried to stress in videos, is like, we didn't make any money for 3 or 4 years. Like by the end of year 4, we started to break even.
Yeah.
And like, so it's not about the money, although yes, you need money to survive. You need money. I mean, you don't need money to survive. You can survive just fine without money. You want to have a certain way of living, then yeah, you want money. But I think a lot of people, it's easy for them to just use that as an excuse without actually stopping and thinking about the finances and thinking about how much it would actually take for them to just be happy. You know, not necessarily living maybe the lifestyle that they're living, maybe a little bit less indulgent, because it is such an easy excuse to say because it's said by everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't have enough money for that. You know, you grow up and you want this toy and your parents well, we don't have any money for that. We don't have any money for that. And it doesn't go beyond that. You don't go further and think about the actual situation, the actual finances, and really, really break that down. And because of that, like, a lot of us are really bad at managing money because it's very black and white. Either I have enough money or I don't have enough money. Putting together a budget and thinking about that, especially if you're thinking about being an artist as a full-time career, and let's say you still have your job, you're going to have to figure out, like, okay, well, how much money on average do I need to make with my art? And how much money do I need to make if I'm going to account for dry months? Because it's not going to be the security blanket that you get, that the illusion of security that you get from working somewhere where you know that you're going to get a check every 2 weeks or whatever, like
Right.
that. Like, that's not how it is. At this point, you are making your own money doing what you do, and the more you put into it, the more money you're going to make. But that's not guaranteed the way that it works. You may put more into it this week and not reap the benefits for another month or so.
Absolutely. Money, it's easy to focus on money because money is tied into survival.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's not useful to focus on money.
I mean, it's funny because so the next book that I want to write is going to be on marketing and money, right? These two things, marketing and money, are the big things that a lot of artists use as excuses. The fact that marketing is hard and I don't know how to do it and blah, 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 as an excuse. And then they use that excuse to just quit. Somebody had sent us a question, and she was at a crossroads in her career, and we answered the question and posted it. And unfortunately, when you go to her website now, there is no website.
Interesting.
So she gave up before we were able to answer the question, in which we say, just keep going because it's impossible to fail. I don't care how much money you're making. Figure out money can come from anywhere. You don't have to be making money with your art when you start your career. You could get a part-time job or do something, but you do have to think further than just, I don't have enough money for that, because that's just discouraging. That's bullshit lingo that is discouraging.
You do have to think further out than what your current circumstances are. We don't have enough money right now to do the things that we're planning on doing next year.
Yep.
And the difference is we've decided we're doing them regardless.
Yes.
So we're putting the ball in motion, and one way or another, something's going to happen.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure it out. Either we come up with the money in some way, shape, or form,
or the plan evolves, or whatever the case is. It's good to just take those steps, regardless of what the current circumstances look like.
Exactly, because the only way that you could really set the ball in motion is to take action and not wait around for the money. I've seen too many people. My cousin, well, I can't do this and this and this until I get this thing, or I can't do this and this and that until I get that thing. And I'm like, dude, just start with where you are and what you have right now.
Get things in motion.
Yeah, get things in motion.
You'd be surprised at what comes of that, just getting things started.
Yeah, when we started, I didn't have anything, and I didn't have any money to get started. Neither one of us did, and we got started with what we had, and thank God we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we could talk about money for
Yeah.
an entire book's worth. So
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next one, which is I don't have an education. I've heard myself say this when it comes to the jewelry world. You know, I haven't had professional training as far
Right.
as how this and this is done. And part of that comes from me wanting someone to tell me what to do. You
Right.
know, because I was used to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of easier than trying to figure things out the hard way and screwing them up. And so I guess it's sort of tied into being afraid to screw up.
Yeah. Most definitely. And I obviously we already established that I don't like being told what to do.
Right.
So like when it comes to education, I love learning. I love learning.
Me too.
The only time that I have a hard time, the only time that I've ever had a hard time, for example, with one of my art teachers was when they were adamant that their way was the right way.
Was the only way.
Was the only way. And so I have a really hard time with that. It's the same thing that I've had when I was working in the corporate world. I've told my bosses off because, you know, they thought that their way was the right way to do it. And simply because they were an authority figure, that they had the right to tell me how to do it. And I was like, I don't need to do it your way. I don't need this job.
Absolutely.
And so like, I think because I grew up the way that I grew up, you know, like my family, my dad has been a bench jeweler since he was 14. He's in his 70s right now, and he is self-taught. We learned from the family. It wasn't like they went somewhere and went to school for it.
They couldn't. They were refugees with
Yeah,
no money.
Exactly. So like they worked different jobs, and at those jobs they picked up some of the skills, and they got those jobs on purpose so that they could pick up those skills, and then they basically then taught themselves a lot of the other stuff, and they are top-notch jewelers. I cannot find better jewelers that are innovative and think on their feet the way that my family is.
Agreed. I've never seen such problem solving, and there's not a thing that they can't do.
Exactly.
I've seen firsthand. As you said, I love learning. I've taken classes.
Yeah.
I would continue to take classes or work under someone. Your dad occasionally teaches me things. I'm going to work with him and
Yeah.
learn that way. However you choose to do it, take the class. Absolutely. Do the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Do an internship. Work with people who maybe are at a skill level that are higher than you that you can learn from. But if you don't have access to those things, or if for some reason it's not right for you to do that right now, don't say you can't just because you don't have the education background.
Right. We got a comment from somebody on YouTube that said that unless you have that education, then you're not going to be able to get these grants and whatever. And she's like an old school artist, and she was pretty upset and basically made it seem like I was anti-academia, right? Mm-hmm. The irony there is that she was talking smack about self-taught people not being able to do it because they don't have the education. And I wasn't talking about academia. I think that whether you go to school or you don't go to school, it doesn't matter. If you're going to school, that's a personal, the whole art career is a personal journey. And it is your journey for you to determine what is right for you. I also know of a lot of academic artists that are very insecure, and they actually feel bad that they're not self-taught because they don't fit into the self-taught realm. You know, it's like,
Right. So
again,
whichever side you fall on, you could use it against yourself. And you're simply saying, don't use it against yourself.
Yeah, don't use it against yourself. It's so funny because it's like we go back to the neat little boxes. Like, oh, well, if you're this kind of artist and I'm not that, you know, it's using those things as excuses to knock yourself down instead of like just saying like, listen, I embrace this. I am self-taught, and I took an airbrushing class, and I took I took art classes as well when I was curious about learning a certain technique or
Yeah.
curious about learning whatever it was that I wanted to learn. Do I think that going to art school is a waste of time? No, not at all. Not at all. That would be ridiculous. Do I think that being self-taught is a waste of time? Not at all. Neither one of those is better than the other to me. And so I think that that's a mentality that I had to have because that's one of my excuses. I used that for years. Well, I don't know enough. I didn't And my self-taught artist career was 10 years of academia, being self-taught and really learning the ropes on my own. Are there things that they know that I don't? Yes. Are there things that I know that they don't? Yes. So, like, I think that there's a benefit to all of it, and it all comes down to the individual and what it is that they want to do.
Absolutely. Different opportunities, different experiences are going to happen depending on which path you take, or maybe you take both paths and you teach yourself this and you take a class for that. Just don't use it as an excuse.
Yeah, don't use it as an excuse to knock yourself down, because that's dumb.
So the next one is widely used, which is I'm too young, right? I don't have the experience, or I'm too old. It's too late for me. And of course, you refer to the no geezer age limit of American Idol.
Right.
And these certain like beliefs that we have in place of like, well, this is sort of the cutoff for you if you want to be a musician, or this is sort of the cutoff for you if you want to be an athlete, or this
Right.
is the cutoff for you if you want to be an artist, and so on and so forth, if you want to be a professional boxer.
A lot of those, like, no geezer limits or whatever, are actually placed in our mentality because of the old structure of things. You wanted to get discovered as an artist when you were in your 20s. You wanted to get discovered as a musician when you were in your 20s.
Of course.
Why? Because the publishing companies and the mainstream gallery system wanted to get you in, and you wanted to have the longevity of that. There were plenty of artists that started their careers when they were in their 50s and 60s and 70s. There's lots of actors that started their careers when they were in their 50s and their 60s. Musicians started their careers later on. There are authors. It's just any age group that you look at, and if you take a look at when certain people started their career, you are going to find those people that decided to not give a shit what everybody else's age limit was, and just pursue the thing because they wanted to, whether they were being told that they were too old or they were being told that they were too young. There are lots of people out there that started their careers when they were way young. And it's hilarious because it's like, you almost look at somebody who's younger and you think to yourself, well, they're a genius and I'm not. So, like, that's your excuse for that, right? Or like, oh, well, they got lucky. I just can't. That's another stupid excuse. That was a great stupid excuse that I used to use all the time. People were lucky and I'm not. No, they put themselves out there. They did it more. They just kept pushing forward and kept going. All I did was sit there and complain about how they were lucky. So like nothing was going to happen in my career.
Right. Yeah, I think age is just completely irrelevant, especially these days. Of course, everyone wants to have gotten started or gotten discovered at a young age, but I think about it. And so I was a musician for many years. I'm still a musician. I'm still writing songs, but I was in my early 20s really badly wanting for my band to get signed. And looking back on it, I thought, oh, it's actually probably a really good thing that we didn't, because none of us had our shit together.
Right.
Like, I don't think that I would have handled that lifestyle.
You would have been a VH1 behind the scenes
Tragedy story. Yeah, I feel like this is exactly the right time for me to be doing what I'm doing, even with music.
I mean, and knowing what you know now, and being the person that you are now, would you really wanted to have signed a record deal with a record label?
No, I mean, I didn't even know what that meant in my early 20s or what that would entail. And so the whole idea that like that ship has sailed is kind of like, it's just irrelevant to me.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Age is a moot point. As long as you're breathing, you've got time.
Absolutely. And especially for something you love that you are going to do, that I want to do what I do until my last breath.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to do. And if I had gotten started in my 60s, then so be it. I'm still going to do it.
You have a limited amount of time on the planet in your life. Yes, that is absolutely true. We're all heading in the same direction. How you spend that time is totally up to you. And you could either A, spend that time saying, well, I'm too young to try and do this. I'm too young to do this. I'm too young to do this. Or I'm too old to do this. Or I'm too old to do this. And I'm too old to do this. Instead of just doing it,
Right.
it really puts into perspective. Like either I'm going to say that I'm too old or I'm just going to do it.
Because 10 years is going to pass. Whether you're doing it or not, 10 years will pass.
Yep.
So would you rather have been doing the thing for
the
10 years
yep.
or not?
That was a hard lesson because I had spent my life being like, oh man, if only I got started when I was in my 30s, then I would have had 5 years experience. Why didn't I stay consistently doing it? And finally, when I was in my late 30s, I was like, I better get started now, because if not, I'm going to be 40 something. And then I'm going to be like, if only I had gotten started 10 years ago, like an idiot, and basically spend the rest of my life just saying, like, if only I had gotten started back when blah, blah, blah. Let me just start now and not worry about the fact that I didn't get started before.
The next one is I don't know how. And I know that you'll have a lot to say about this because this one pisses you off, I think.
It does. It does. It really does. I don't like that as an excuse because you can learn it, damn it. You can learn it. And that's how I feel. Like I don't like not knowing how to do something that I need to do, right? So I will do whatever it takes to learn it, whether I teach myself or if it's something that is complicated or complex or has to do with like a lot of times with technology and stuff. You know, like I'm the guy that knows how to take apart a computer. I'm the guy that knows how to take apart my laptop and fix it. I'm the guy that knows how to fix the car, take a look at the engine, change the cluster. I'm not a mechanic and I'm not a computer technician. I don't know shit about programming computers because I have no interest in it. But the things that I need to do and the things that I need to work on, I don't like having to rely on someone else doing it because I don't know how to do it. Especially if it's something that repeats. So like, for example, like with fixing the car, I don't want to have to rely on a mechanic. I will take my car to a mechanic if it's something that I'm like, oh, that's too much. But at least I know what is actually going on with it. It's not a big mystery to me. And I think that that's the thing that bothers me about that. People just let it be a mystery.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that you have to do the work. I'm not going to be the one that repairs my laptop. I'm going to take it in to get repaired, but I know what's going on with it.
Either if you don't know how, basically what you're saying is learn how or let someone else do it.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
that shouldn't be an excuse to not do something. We didn't know how to do our taxes.
Yeah.
So we tried to do our taxes. We eventually hired a bookkeeper because it was more beneficial to do it that way. But we learned what the processes were for getting the taxes done the right way.
And basically, we asked the questions and we had a bookkeeper and we took advantage of the fact that we had a bookkeeper and asked them questions and took a look at the forms and why is this being filled out here and why is that being filled out there. And after 6 years of having bookkeepers, like we were able to do our own taxes. And the plan wasn't like, we're going to get rid of this bookkeeper or like whatever because we want to do our own taxes. But just the fact that like we were able to learn the process so that when if we did take our stuff to a bookkeeper, it was not a big mystery and taxes were not a big pain in the butt. And this year with what's going on, the fact that we were able to do our own taxes and we understood what was going on because we couldn't go meet with a bookkeeper.
Right.
And it's not like you got to go out and learn everything. But if you are doing something, like let's say you want to know how to do marketing, right? Teach yourself how to do marketing.
Yeah.
You know, just put it out there. Just get it started. Understand that you're going to fail and you're going to make mistakes. The first time we tried to do taxes, we were horrible at it. It took us 3 days. And then at that point, I was like, yeah, let's just get a bookkeeper.
If it's something you want to do, like you've heard me say, well, I don't know how to use this music program.
Yeah.
And you're like, just make a bad song.
Yeah,
you know,
just get started on it. Just play around. Just don't make it so serious. And I think that the biggest thing is like people are afraid to try something new because they're afraid that they're gonna make a mistake, that they're gonna fail, that it might take a little bit longer, that they don't know how. And it's like you're not gonna know how unless you actually try it. unless you actually get started with it.
Absolutely, which leads us into the next one, which is I just can't change, i.e., this is just who I am, and this one pisses me off
Yeah.
for several reasons. The main reason it pisses me off is because we change every day. Every
Yeah.
day that you wake up, you're a different person, having had life experiences from the previous day. You can't help but to evolve and change. It's who you are as a human being. If things are seeming the same, it's because you keep telling yourself the same story every
Yeah.
day. That really aggravates me. I think it just stems from like, really what you mean is you're afraid to change things.
Yeah.
You're comfortable in your sameness, and it's scary.
Yeah, or it just means like this excuse works for me. Well, that's just how I am. You know, somebody's like, hey, you know what? That was really mean. Well, that's just how I am. Okay, well, you're a jerk. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. And you're a jerk that is completely inflexible and unwilling to change. For a lot of people, it's like, well, you know, I just don't know how to do those kind of things. I just can't blah, 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 blah. They're speaking it out there and saying like, this is the truth of the matter and this doesn't change. And not understanding that, like, if you're just using it as a crutch, just an excuse, because that's all it is, it is a lame, and that's when I was talking earlier about having lame ass excuses, that's one of the ones that I used that was completely lame, because the only reason that it was true was because I kept proclaiming that it was true.
Every day,
Yeah,
right?
but it was complete bullshit. I just can't do these things. I don't have it in me to be able to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, man, just stop making excuses. If you want this thing, then go for it. And stop telling yourself that you can't or that you're not that kind of person.
Yeah, I mean, I know people, I've had people say to me, who I am is I don't think I could ever support myself doing something that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I just don't think I could do it. And I would say, well, you'd be really surprised what you could do when you're faced with the situation. It's just that you keep telling yourself this story
Right.
that you can't do it. 15 years ago, I could not communicate verbally in any way that was like enjoyable for me or easily understandable for other humans. That was my belief.
Right.
Speaking to another person, a group of people, let alone a bunch of somebodies, was easily the most terrifying thing
Right.
to me. I just didn't want to do it. I'm just not somebody who can speak to other people. I just can't communicate that way. It's not who I am. I told that story.
I know. Well, yeah, I know. You told me that story.
I told you that story. And here I sit, recording audiobook commentary
Yep.
and feeling pretty comfortable, feeling comfortable. Doing the YouTube channel, feeling comfortable. We have a podcast, feeling comfortable. Was it comfortable at first? Hell no.
Yeah.
I am one of the most awkward, shy, socially awkward people you could ever hope to meet. Or I was, back when I told myself that story.
You're still that
I just don't
in
care.
a beautiful way. Yeah, exactly. You don't care. And that's the difference, is like you could relate to that. You're totally socially awkward. This entire recording is going to be extremely socially awkward
Totally.
because we both are very socially awkward. The difference is you're not using it as a crutch to avoid things anymore.
Right.
Because that's the problem. I'm not this kind of person. When we would have the conversation, you were like, well, I'm the kind of person that needs to stop and think about what I'm going to say. So that's why, like, I just don't say much.
Right, and I remember telling you it's just a lot easier for me to express myself in song format than conversation.
Yeah.
And you were like, so you're going to tell me everything in song format? Like, that's going to be a long process. A long process. Basically, you can change and you do it all the time. Stop holding yourself back because you're scared.
Every day. Don't buy into your lame excuses. If you're telling yourself, like, I'm just not this kind of person, stop and actually look at that and say, am I happy with that?
And if you are happy with that, then so be it. But
Because to be honest with you, a lot of times when you say, when those words come out of your mouth, it's because you're about to proclaim something that you're really not that proud of.
a self-limiting belief.
Exactly.
And that goes right into I'm afraid to fail.
Yeah.
What a dumb thing to teach kids.
It is a very dumb thing to teach kids. In actuality, it is impossible to fail. Impossible. Failure just failure in of itself, the way that a lot of people see failure is when shit goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when shit goes wrong, you fix it, or you change direction, or you move into a different, you decide to do something different, you switch it up a little bit. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
If you quit, then that's exactly where you left it. You left it as a failure. And that to me, it is impossible to fail unless you quit.
I think people get mistakes and hiccups and obstacles confused with failure.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're taught not to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Not to have hiccups.
Yeah, you get the big red X on anything that you made. You made a mistake. You failed. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You make a lot of mistakes in your test, in your exam.
You fail.
You fail.
Right.
You know, and so like everybody's kind of trained that way. And in actuality, that's not how life works.
No, failure and mistakes are critical for growth.
Yes.
There was nothing good ever created brand new that no one had ever seen before that didn't have a series of mistakes preceding it.
Exactly. And trust me, if you are going to try and head in a direction that you've never headed in before, and you're going to try to be outside of your comfort zone and try this new thing, experimentation or whatever, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is guaranteed. You are going to fail. You know why? Because it's never been done before. And that is freaking awesome, because through those failures, you learn more about yourself and the process itself.
Absolutely. I'm going to lump the next two together because they kind of go hand in hand in my mind.
Okay.
It's just not the right time, and I'm just not ready. And
yeah.
I would like to start this by saying I've never been ready for any of the opportunities that have presented themselves. I faced them with body trembling, shortness of breath, a little bit of sweat in the armpits, and hope.
Yeah.
That it would work out okay.
Yeah.
Basically, that's how I've faced every new thing. And the best things that I've done so far in this journey as an artist, I was not ready for.
Right.
But the opportunity comes and you either take it or you don't.
On the one hand, you have people that are called risk takers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically what you're doing is an opportunity opens up. You don't know, because it's a new opportunity.
Right.
You don't know how to do it. If you had done it before, then it's not a new opportunity.
Right.
New opportunity opens up, so it's a risk. And what ends up happening is either A, you say, yes, I'm going for it, and you're not afraid to not get it perfect. You're not afraid of failure, basically. You're not afraid of making a mistake because you don't have to get it perfect. I've never done this before. I'm going to go in. Or you're afraid of not getting it perfect. You're afraid of making a mistake, and you just say, I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. And that's ridiculous. I think I make the analogy of like somebody standing next to a pool in their bathing suit, right? And they know how to swim, and they're standing at the edge of the pool, and you're like, come on, join us. And they're like, wait, I'm not ready to jump in. And it's like, you're jumping into a pool. What you're ready. You have a swimsuit on. Your phone is not in your pocket. You're ready to jump in. But it really comes down to the fear that you're going to look like a fool, mm-hmm. the fear that you're going to make a mistake, the fear that you got to get it right. Mm-hmm. And that's really the only reason that I've seen somebody say that I'm not ready.
And the fear is okay. The fear is going to be there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Feel the fear and jump in the pool anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it was the thing that I don't like being afraid, right, of things. So, which is why I'm all about trying something new. I am terrified of singing on stage, mm-hmm. playing music on stage. I don't know why, right? For some reason, my knees buckle. I get the sweats. It's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like that. So when we were in Key West and we got invited to sing and play music at a celebration of life, I could have easily been like, oh, I'm not ready for that. To me, that would have been a missed opportunity to show myself who I am. And we did it, and my knees buckled, and I paused the song halfway through, and I was super nervous and whatever. And it is and even though I supposedly made a mistake and obviously it didn't come out perfect, it was one of the best experiences of my life because I put myself out there and showed myself what I was capable of. and what I was capable of was putting myself out there even though I wasn't ready, knowing that I had the freaking strength to just get out there even if my knees buckled.
Of course, with the one, it's just not the right time. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
When is the right time? We knew this wonderful woman who was in her 90s when we met her.
Yes.
And you talk about her in the book.
Yep.
We watched her ride a motorcycle for the first time. She played music with us. She was into trying new foods, having new experiences.
And her thing was, if not now, when?
Yeah. And that's something that we try to live by.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, I'm just not inspired, which I think is really not the truth. Whenever
Right.
whenever I've heard myself say I'm not inspired, what I usually mean is I'm sad, or I'm feeling sorry for myself, or I've spent too much time berating myself with insults, and I'm feeling generally down about things.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not inspired.
Like walking into the studio and saying, well, I'm going to create some art, and you aren't feeling inspired because you're feeling downtrodden, because you've just completely discouraged yourself. The thing is that a lot of people think that it's like these emotions that you're either inspired or you're whatever, and don't realize that, like, if you're looking at your art career and you're thinking to yourself, like, what's the point? You know, even if you have that negative voice come in your head and say, like, what's the point? Like, no matter what I do, I haven't been able to sell any art. I haven't been able to blah, blah, blah. None of that is inspiring.
No.
And that's where people make that separation. Like, they don't understand, like, inspiration isn't something that you find in your pocket or whatever. It is based on the things that you tell yourself when you look at life. That's where inspiration comes from.
Absolutely.
So if you are de-inspiring yourself by saying that you're a loser and that you're not going to make it, and look at that artist over there, he sold pieces and I can't even sell one piece, and I've been doing this for a year and nothing is happening, and there's no traction, there's no blah, 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 and you just completely destroy yourself and discourage yourself from wanting to move forward in any which way, I'm sorry, you're not gonna feel inspired.
I agree, and I would add that inspiration will find you when you have tools in hand.
Yes, that's where, for me personally, like, I have different approaches when it comes to inspiration. If I'm not feeling it in the studio, I know that emotionally I've put myself in some whack ass place, right? So, like, then at that point, what's most important to me is to put myself to really, really become my biggest cheerleader and get myself back on track, no matter what, whether it doesn't have to happen in the studio. Maybe it's taking a walk, maybe it's doing whatever, playing some music and dancing around like a crazy person, doing whatever to get my energy back up to where I want it to be, in a good place, and then be able to say positive things and look at more positive outcomes and things like that, instead of like being in that downward spiral of negativity. So that's one approach. The other one is just get started on something easy. Mm-hmm. Just start painting. Just start creating something. Just decide to not think. Basically, put yourself in a place of meditation, which is usually what happens when you're creating already. And that way you're not in your brain discouraging yourself and you're just creating. But it is a hurdle to get there sometimes.
That's basically where fa-chunking is yet again useful.
Yeah.
Let me just do this.
Yeah,
Let me
exactly.
just do this. Well, so those are the ones you cover in the book. Obviously, there's a plethora of good excuses we tell ourselves.
Right.
My family's not supportive. Well,
Yep.
join the club.
Yep.
So your suggestion is, why not call bullshit on your excuses?
Yeah.
Why not make empowering excuses for why you can do things?
Yes.
That's a novel idea. To make excuses for why you're awesomely unstoppable and perfectly capable and ready.
Yeah,
for the next
exactly.
thing.
I mean, and that's the beauty of excuses, is that, okay, excuses are complete and utter bullshit, no matter what, no matter which excuse you're doing. So really it comes down to, how is the excuse making you feel? So do you want to keep repeating excuses that make you feel like crap and make you feel like you can't achieve things? Or would you rather just spout out some excuses that make you feel like a badass?
And your brain's going to be like, that's not true when you first start doing it.
Right.
And that's where you have to call bullshit. Well, neither is that disempowering crap that I've been telling myself.
Exactly.
I think that's a good practice. I mean, this is all tied into self-talk. How are you talking to yourself? What is the brain chatter in your head? What are you repeating every day throughout the day? And taking a look at that.
You know, it's funny because a lot of people, sometimes it's like they need that reminder that like, hey, stop for a moment and really, really take a look at how you're talking to yourself. I know that with as much as I know how important it is to keep track of your self-talk, I know that I've lost track of it sometimes, where like something will catch me off guard. I'm like, whoa, that was like horrible. Why would I say that to myself?
Absolutely. As much as we talk about these things, I'm a total jerk face to myself a lot of times.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the excuses that we tell ourselves are a really good window. A lot of excuses that we tell ourselves and that we tell other people. Listen, if it's in your brain and you're telling yourself this thing, then you got to pay attention. If it's coming out of your mouth and you're telling yourself this thing or someone else and you're using it as an excuse, pay attention to the crap that's coming out of your mouth that you use to describe yourself, and really make that conversation, make those excuses something that is powerful for you, something that you could really utilize to like, you know, remind yourself constantly that you're a badass. And that way, because the excuses that you use are just things that you memorize that like, they're just throwaway comments that you memorize. So like you repeat them over and over and over.
Absolutely.
So make them awesome.
In other words, put the use back in excuses. You like that one?
Okay.
Yeah, well, you did ask me to do this commentary.
Let's move on to the next section, please. And that concludes this section of the audiobook. Thank you so much for listening, you guys. If you would like, you can proceed to the next section. Have an awesome day. Adios.